Hello, hello. This is Christina
This is Shell.
and we are here with New Earth Conversations podcast. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for listening. Shell and I were chit-chatting the other day, and we had the topic come up about root belief systems and how they're very powerful and we can choose them and we can choose which ones we're operating from, and it'll affect the quality of our life. And some are more helpful and some not so much. And how many of them did we inherit from our family or our friends or society, and how many of them actually came from us and our experience or our desires or the yearnings of our own heart. That got me thinking about how when I was in college, I had a philosophy class, and the professor said to be careful with logical arguments because you can make a logical argument from a false premise. And we can think of that premise as like the root belief or the root assumption. And I loved that, and that really stuck with me. And when that professor said that, I started to analyze all of the root belief systems that I was holding and then playing with the logical conclusions that would follow from that. And I got a lot of value from that. So an example was that I used to operate by, especially being in science and hearing about Darwinism and evolution is like the strongest survive and survival of the fittest, and it's competition and everyone's out for their own self-interest, and that humans are like this. We're innately selfish and greedy and just looking out for ourselves. And when I was looking at the world that way, that's what I saw. Everything that happened in my life, I interpreted through that lens and was trying to reaffirm those conclusions. And that felt really ugly. That wasn't fun. It felt pretty icky. And it made me feel distrustful of people, and it had a negative impact on my relationships. And it made me more selfish and manipulative and playing into behaviors that I later found out are not fulfilling. And when I switched, when I went through this inventory, I was like, well, how about I try on this belief, which to me now feels like a knowing, but in that transition, maybe when you're first trying it on, it feels like a belief that people are innately divine and they're actually altruistic and giving and caring. And the first shift of this, I was seeing a documentary called I Am, and it was about this. It was about how we talk about how humans are innately selfish and in competition, when really altruism and working together shows up a lot, and that kindness. And how much have we experienced where we just can't help but want to like shower
Mhm.
our loved ones with generosity and goodwill and all that. And so when I shifted and I started coming into more spiritual concepts, and I was in Buddhist philosophy for a while, my life became so much more beautiful just from shifting this belief, because now this was all that I was seeing. I was just seeing affirmation of this root principle that I was holding. And when someone treated me poorly, rather than having anger or vindictiveness like I did in the past, because my root belief now was they're innately divine, they are light, they are love, how can I justify this mistreatment? It was like, wow, they must really be in pain. They must really be suffering. They must be disconnected and just acting out of their own pain. And that switched my reaction to compassion. And I was able to melt and soften and not take things so personally. And I had more energy for my own life. I wasn't spinning out on those stories of what was going on with that person. I was able to just kind of be like, okay, that happened. I'm going to take my space, send them love, and go on my way. And now I wasn't trapped in these like dramatic
Mm.
interactions or draining relationships or toxic dynamics, everything just started to soften in my life, and things just felt more beautiful and positive. What does that bring up for you, Shell?
That whole concept of premise, false premise, or logic, I think, is really a really cool way of explaining how beliefs work. And the whole time you were talking, I think so. I mentioned before to Christina that systems and corruption has been a big thing for me, as well as in my family. And there was a huge moment in my life where I had an epiphany of like how beliefs really work and how they are a self-fulfilling prophecy. So for a long time, even to this day, my brother will be on the phone with me and I'd be like, yeah, but their parents do all this, or like they came from hella money. Like, so saying all these things that justify his belief of he doesn't have enough. If he had more, he'd have more opportunity. Like, these people are successful because A, B, and C. So there's a belief around wealth and around opportunity. But the irony is that there is truth, but not the truth he's giving it. And what I mean by that is, if you're raised in an environment of wealth and abundance, think of the beliefs that are going to be bestowed on you because of that environment. So rich people do, quote unquote, have more opportunity, not because they're inherently rich. It's because their environment is conducive to it. They grow up thinking, well, my dad, my mom, you know what I mean? Like, everybody in their family is used to having opportunity, being well educated, just feeling confident in themselves because they're surrounded by that energy. So it's not surprising that if you were to be raised in a poor environment where things are scarce, you're not as educated, you're going to pick up on those beliefs of like, life is hard, it's a struggle, you have to work. So neither are right or wrong. They're just a matter of what is. And once we understand that, regardless of your environment, and this is proven too, because there are plenty of rich families that have kids that, because of whatever their own making and the way that they perceive and how they choose to look at the world, they become addicted to prescription medication. They become extremely depressed. They're disconnected from their parents. They're not happy, and they don't feel like they have much opportunity. But if you looked at it objectively, quote unquote, you'd be like, well, you literally have everything you can need. But that's not how they feel. So to me, that's proof that it doesn't matter the environment you're raised in. It can make a difference. It can make it easier, but it really just comes down to your own perception of yourself and the world.
Mm-hmm.
And deciding to become conscious of how you're viewing yourself in the world. And like Christina so perfectly shared, is like, how do I want to see myself? How do I want to see people? And I actually, one of the biggest pieces of advice is that I've taken from this concept was, the only difference between the people who have it and the people who don't is the people who do have it believe that they could, and the people who don't believe that they couldn't. And that's a hard pill to swallow because as individuals and as a society, I think we're so used to being victims of our reality. Like, it's easier to feel like it's just not for me. Like, it's not like I don't have a chance. It's not like I actually have the power, because if you do, then you actually have to take responsibility for the fact that you can create what you want, which is both exciting as hell for the soul, but terrifying for the ego, because it's like, oh crap. Like, so you're saying this is all my fault? No, we're not saying that at all, because it's not about fault or blame. Yeah, and that's ironically, of course, the ego is going to go that way. Like, oh, why would I have created this life? Well, you didn't know. Like, most of us haven't been taught this stuff, and it's exciting because now we are stepping into a new understanding of both science and spirituality. And there's a lot of big names that are talking about this stuff, like Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, and there's plenty of pretty big people who are all encouraging this empowerment through our perception. Do you remember back in the day? There are no rules. There's no rules.
There's no rules.
Yeah, like I got like that's something that really stuck with me, and there really are not. And the only rules that there are the ones that you choose to follow, and that's liberating. It's extremely exciting. Is that, like, what rules do I want to follow? And we do live we live in a conditioned society where that's a challenging narrative to take, to be like, well, I'm going to create my own rules. But we also have plenty of examples of people doing it, and even ourselves in our own lives as we go through different experiences. It all comes back to like, you can't love anybody until you love yourself. That
Mhm.
cliche is so much deeper than just loving yourself. It's like it all does come from within. And I've always been very passionate about, to make change on the outside, we truly need to make change on the inside. And that starts from like, well, how do I want to be in the world? Who do I want to be, and how do I want to see the world? And choosing to come from that context, and
Mhm.
then watch as the things around you start to change without not having to change at all. Like, so
Right, right. I love like a few things you brought up. One, it reminded me of that phrase, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
exactly.
To the idea that what if it's not so much about being right or correct in these beliefs or principles, but what's the most helpful? And you get to decide what is helpful. Like for me, I enjoy feeling harmonious relationships. I like laughing with friends and enjoying my life and feeling vital and alive and invigorated and inspired. And I enjoy handling challenges with grace and feeling open and held and supported. Like all of these things are helpful to me. And so, what are the beliefs that allow me to experience more of that? And what's beautiful about this is you don't have to take anyone's word for it. You
Hmm.
just experiment for yourself, try things on, and watch your reality change. I used to be a neuroscientist. I'm still a scientist at heart because I think the essence of science is curiosity and exploration. And so, in that sense, I very much have the heart of the scientist. I'm fiercely curious. And when I went on this more mystical path, it felt more true to me than any scientific studies I ever read about or any experiments that I ran myself or things that I saw in textbooks and stuff, because this was like my lived reality. This was what I was actually experiencing, and in that sense, it was undeniable. I wrote this funny paper in college that the whole premise of the paper was that the only reality that really matters is subjective reality. So even if there's an objective reality, objective, like true for
Yeah.
all. And I use the example, let's say that the objective reality was that you're on a snowy mountaintop, blizzard conditions. If in your subjective reality, you're on a hot island, tropical island, and you have your little swim trunks on or your swimsuit, and you are just lounging in the sand. You are just laying, enjoying the sun. It feels warm on your skin. Like you are just in this beautiful subjective reality of this lovely tropical island. Even if you died, you became hypothermic
Hmm.
because objectively you were freezing to death. You would go to sleep peacefully thinking you were napping on this incredible tropical island blissed out. So who cares what the objective who cares what the objective reality is in that sense? And some people may say like, well, but what the heck, I don't actually like want to die or whatever in that
Yeah.
example. And within that, something that came up for me while you were speaking, because on that theme of like there's no rules to an extent. And what I mean by that is as you experiment and as you start to notice things, you may find like this convergence on what some people may call universal laws, like the laws of cause and effect, or we're experiencing the consequences of our actions. What I've noticed is these things that I can have distilled through my life as what I consider more and more to be universal truths is the more that I go through my life, the more that they are evidenced in every situation. Like, I cannot find an example, I cannot find an exception to the
Mm-hmm.
rule. I've noticed personally, again, it's an ever evolving thing. I think coming to universal truth is kind of the great adventure of life,
Mm-hmm.
especially in this human condition where our comprehension is limited in certain ways. I noticed when I tried on what at the time was a belief, but now feels more like a knowing and more in that
Okay.
universal truth sector, is this idea that everyone is divine and love is the most powerful force in all existence. And
Yeah.
love has the power to transmute anything and everything back into love. And
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed as I go through my life, if there's a potential conflict with someone and I approach that conversation with the most love and kindness and compassion, the most loving version of that person meets me there. And suddenly there's not drama or chaos and situations that in the past, when I would have gone in with a different assumption
Mm-hmm.
and handled differently, and then they go off the rails in some sort of chaotic, dramatic way, that doesn't happen anymore. I can't even think of the last time I've had that happen. So to me now this is beginning to feel like a universal truth, that everyone is divine, that at our essence we are love, that it is something we will all return home to, that if we're not currently in that loving expression, we're a bit lost and disconnected, and that's okay. It's not good or bad or right and wrong, and we'll have opportunity after opportunity to come back home to that remembrance. And when I'm in that and feel that in my life, it's like, wow, life just gets more and more beautiful and more enjoyable. I was sitting in a ceremony with Mama Aya, and I was feeling this transmission. I was dancing. I was dancing and I was kissing my hands and my arms, and
Wow.
the music felt so good, and like my body felt incredible, and I felt like I was falling in love with my body at such a deeper level, and I was crying these sweet soft tears of just like gratitude. Just I was blissed out being in this body dancing to this music, and I heard her say, this is how it was always meant to be.
Hmm.
The divine blueprint for Earth and to be in form in this realm was to be in the rapture and the bliss of being in form,
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy being in form and creating in this world of form. It's meant to be fun and playful and enjoyable. And she's like, things got a little off the rails because with our free will, we have
Yeah.
the power to miscreate. And I don't mean miscreate like it's bad
I
or
understand.
morally wrong. It's that it's not in alignment with that universal law or
Mm-hmm.
divine law. And when we act in ways or create things that are not in alignment with that law, the consequences don't feel good. And again, it's not because the divine is punishing us, it's because we're experiencing the consequences of our actions. And in this most loving universe, that experience of the repercussion of what we've chosen is the exact guiding point we need to return back to love and
Yeah.
experience the bliss
Yeah.
that we are. It's the perfect motivation to return back home. Because if we're like, oh, this is icky, I don't like this, what better incentive to shift direction and try new things until we come back into, oh, wow, this understanding of the world and this way that I act from and these thoughts that I choose to have now, or the way I frame situations or interpret things, this feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
This feels good. It was always meant to be that way. And I think a lot of people give flack to humanity, where they're like, oh my God, we're such big POSs. Like, we're
Yeah.
such, we're awful. Like, what have we done? But
Well, I mean, just to play off the last thing, it was deeply ingrained in religion as well that humans were just innately sinned and just flawed, and I think that plays a huge part in it. And also, I think it's ironically a design of our own main operating system, i.e., our ego, is to think that, like, is to look for what's wrong or like try to understand and control things. But I do think with what you said, maybe a far stretch for all of us to remember that innate love that's within. But at the same time, there's plenty of examples that I feel like we can come up with, like for example, just like the witnessing life literally being born, like a baby
Mm.
amongst all different generations. Like when a baby is born, whether it's a human baby or an animal, like there's just this enamored like purity to life coming into this universe. Like when you look at that baby, you can't help but feel like what you're talking about, that underlying pure love that we all come from. And that's like right when it comes out, right when it comes from the void, love. And it's like, and no one can deny that feeling of like, oh. So it's like we all witness it and we all feel it amongst all walks of life. But then because of the conditioning of society and ironically, and this is my belief, our choice to have forgotten, because we all chose to come into this life as each, like you chose to be Christina, I chose to be Kjell, I chose to have this body, and my parents all to learn what I needed to learn in order to be the fullest expression of myself. And we as a collective all chose to forget too. So when we came from that knowing and we're like, this is gonna be fucking nuts. We're gonna like let's do this human experiment where we can live in a dimension where we can experience all five senses, like taste, touch, all that. We'll have free will, which is literally, when you think about it, just the power to create. We were given the power of God as individuals. Like that's where the whole like you are God comes from,
Hmm.
because we are like as above so below. Like God is within us, and we get to decide how we use that creative power. And like I think this is something that I've learned that really tugs at my heartstrings, because it's because like if you have any awareness, even if you're just religious, but if you think of, because there's often in the human psyche or way of viewing things, there's like this higher than thou view of entities. For examples, angels, our ascended masters, just like that godly presence is easy for us to view outside of ourselves.
Hmm.
They are in a higher dimension, but it's all part of the one universal energy. They're all a part of us. But those higher dimensional beings or entities or whatever you want to call them, they revere us humans so much because of the mission that we've chosen and our power to create and also our power to expand. Because in the third and fourth dimension is truly the dimensions of where universal expansion happens. And that requires us going through the lower and higher vibrations, as well as having the awareness of what we're doing and how we're experiencing ourselves. So the more aware we come of ourselves and each other, the more we're helping to expand the whole collective. And that's like a huge feat to take on. Like we're all like, I want to be human. I want to expand the universe. Like,
Wow.
holy but Jesus, like that's a big deal. Like, and if you can like feel into that choice that you've made as a human being, whether you're on a high rise in New York or if you're just on a farm in the middle of nowhere, like we all chose to be here to expand not only ourselves but literally the universe. And that's insane to me. I just and I think we all have, I don't think, I know we all have this knowing like you're talking about, and we tap into that throughout our lives in different experiences. There's a pattern in these experiences of remembrance, and it is usually all based in like, I'd say the key foundations of love, which is unity, community, um, connection, all those things. That's why when a baby is born and you're holding that baby, you just have that holy bejesus, like what is happening to me right now? And it's exciting for us as humans to, I think, be moving as a collective, even though it might not seem, because there is a lot of dissonance and a lot of chaos happening right now. I know that we're moving closer and closer to this understanding of our innate divinity, and it's frustrating even saying that, I get a little irritated because I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, divinity, that's a loaded statement. Like there's a lot of words that trigger people because of the dogma or whatever is behind it. But it's like, it doesn't matter what word you choose. We
Mm-hmm.
are a lot more powerful than we're giving ourselves credit. And that power it doesn't have to reside in the power that we're familiar with, which comes from control, but the
Mm-hmm.
power that comes from the soul and like expansiveness and just knowing.
I'm just so touched by the human spirit in that you look around and you know, especially based on your own experience, that it's highly likely that these other people around you have gone through hell and back in certain ways. Like we've all had our traumatic experiences. We've experienced a lot that is painful or hurtful. Some of us have been betrayed or violated or the receivers of like heinous crimes, unthinkable, unimaginable pains and violations and trespasses, abuse, and those same people can have a spontaneous moment of laughter
Mm-hmm.
together. They can make eye contact across the room and smile. And it's like, if that is not a testament of the power and the incredibleness of the human spirit, what is? That
Mm-hmm.
we can have so much evidence against something, but our spirit still meets in this place of joy and connection and love.
Mm-hmm.
Like that we can still laugh. We can still laugh and play and enjoy each other's presence, even after all that we've been through. Like, that is astounding to me. And I feel like no one really talks about that or gives that much credit. Like, have you looked around the world? Have you looked at the people in the grocery store, like chit chatting and giggling with each other? And it's like, we're doing great. Like, I realize that there's a lot of things that feel heavy and unfair in the world, and I'm not diminishing that at
Mm-hmm.
all. And can we also acknowledge how alongside all of that there is so much beauty and so much connection and joy and peace and harmony and people helping one another and uplifting one another and celebrating each other, and like, why not create more of that?
I was just going to say, like, the law of attraction is a very much an important law, which was pop culture hijacked for more manifestation and like, you're going to get that sick ass car. It's like, but no, what law of attraction simplified literally is like energy attracts like energy. So energy has different, it flows on a frequency. So this vibration is going to attract this vibration. And what Christina is just sharing, it's like, rather than focus on the vibration of chaos and disruption and fear and deprivation and all that, why don't we as a culture, as an individuals, focus more on the vibration of, wow, we actually all really love each other, like we're helping each other out, there's so much good happening, and the more we focus on that good happening, the more we're going to see evidence of it. And
Right.
that's going to be the big shift into what we all really want. Like, that's the irony, is just like, the more we continue to focus on what we don't want, the more we're going to continue to see it. And
Mm-hmm.
it sucks because I know a lot of people are like, well, the news just always shows the same stuff. It's like, yeah, but you tune into the news,
Mm-hmm.
and your choices make it have an effect on what we consume. So the more we choose not to buy into a specific
Narrative.
perspective, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or narrative. It's just like in school. Like, remember when like I was for sure the student who's like, I didn't do the homework. Let's all not do that. Like if we all choose not to participate, then the teacher's gonna have to change the
Right.
direction that they're used to, because they have to. They're gonna be like, well, no one's participating.
Right.
We're gonna have to watch Bill Nye. Like
Or
that's
even if you think about it in like buying power, like how we vote with our dollar, if
Mhm.
people refused to buy food that was grown with pesticides and Roundup and all these things that have been shown to have these negative health consequences, the the people growing the food, the companies behind whatever would have to change because they do have their profit and interest. And if they're not profiting, if they're not appeasing the consumer, then they don't actually have the power. That's one of the biggest lies that we tell ourselves is they have all the power and I
Yeah.
have none. And it's like they are dependent on you. And yes, there are nuances of how organizations can manipulate things at a systemic level. We recently had snow in Atlanta, Georgia. I guess the last time it happened was in 2018, and it was called the snowpocalypse and caused a bunch of mayhem. It was a whole state of emergency. And we saw that there was going to be snow in the forecast. And when I was overhearing some people who had been like watching the news, they were saying, like Georgia's about to be in a state of emergency. You know, it had this like kind of fear mongering energy behind it. And in my head, I'm like, we'll see. You know, like we'll see what happens. I'll be reasonable. I have my groceries for a few days and I'm not going to plan on driving and I'll set myself up that way. But let's just see what I actually view in my immediate reality. And sure enough, I wake up, it's incredibly beautiful. And I'm seeing just families playing all day, like kids sledding for the first time, laughing. I live right across from a park. Just so many families and friends hanging out in the snow, playing, laughing. And I went on a walk around the block later, and it was very serene. And I was just like looking at the little animals coming out and people walking with their little ones. And I was like, the only thing I'm seeing in my actual immediate reality is beauty. There's just beauty everywhere. How would that be colored if I had been feeding into the narrative of like, state of emergency? I mean, the truth is, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is, you'll know when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And the even more meta layer of that is your perception will color what is to whatever, again, that root. We started this conversation with root belief systems or principles or premises, and it's like you will witness that. I used to operate from the assumption that people were like selfish and greedy.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, I could have kept feeding that belief. There's plenty of stuff in the news that would have me continue that way. But somehow life brought me a different way. And those beliefs didn't hold up.
Yes.
And these ones, they keep holding up more and more and more and more. Like they are gaining strength at rapid speed.
I know I mentioned babies before. I'm very much a kid person. I really love children, and I think they're our greatest teacher in this concept of remembrance. Like if we view kids in their innocence and purity and exploration of the world and how they connect with each other, I mean, yeah, like they bicker and fight and whatever, and like, but underneath those like trivial disagreements, there's this very solid understanding and connection with each other as well as the world around them. And I think we could learn a lot from the kids in our lives, whether they're our kids or just kids in general.
Beautiful. Alrighty, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening in. An invitation to go through your personal inventory of your beliefs or your principles or your premises and just check out, like, would there be ones that feel more helpful or perhaps may lead to more of what I enjoy experiencing, ones that lead to greater fulfillment, and just play with that and experiment. So thank you. This is Christina signing off.
Thank you. This is Shell.
We'll see you on the flip side.